This lecture is on the definitions of the upper and lower respiratory tracts, and we're going to start talking about the air passages, specifically this time the nasal passage. So the upper respiratory tract then. This then is basically all the conducting passageways delivering air to the lungs. So it's basically everything outside of the lungs. Your mouth, your nasal passages, larynx, trachea, and the primary bronchi. Basically everything up to the lungs then is a part of your upper respiratory tract. And all these things then serve as a passage for the air, of course. Also as a filter, taking out debris, and an air conditioner, moistening the air and adjusting the temperature. And this then protects the more delicate conduction and exchange surfaces in the lower respiratory tract. From debris pathogens, that is to say microorganisms that want to make you sick, and also environmental extremes. So that's where the temperature adjustment and the moistening come in. Then we have the lower respiratory tract. That then is basically everything after the primary bronchi. So that is to say everything within the lungs. Okay, so those are your definitions. Then basically inside the lung, that's your lower respiratory tract. Above the lung, that's your upper respiratory tract. Now we're going to get into more detail about the passages. I've given you the overview of what the whole system looks like, all of the different tubes along the way. But now I want to get into more detail on each step, starting at the beginning with the nasal passage. So the nasal passage then. The air enters the nose, then through the external nares. Also known as the nostrils. The vestibule, then, is the portion of the nasal cavity contained by the external nose. So basically this inside there then is the vestibule. So the air enters the nasal cavity. That's a Y. And the air eventually gets to the internal nares, through which, that tells you it's an opening. So eventually the air eventually gets to the internal nares, then through which it, that is to say the air, passes into the nasopharynx. So basically the internal nares are that opening between your nasal cavity and the first part of your pharynx. So the air eventually gets there. But it's not really a direct passage. So, but first, before it actually gets to the nasopharynx then, the air is diverted through what are called the nasal conchae. When you were studying the skull, you saw some of the conchae. I hope you remember here in the nose area, there were those funny little curly bones down at the bottom there. Those were some of the nasal conchae. There are others. So the nasal conchae then are little bones. And what they do is make the air in your nasal passages swirl around. So by passing around the nasal conchae, the air is made to eddy, that is to say, sort of stop for a moment in some places, and swirl. So it slows down, it stops, it swirls around, it does all kinds of things like this. And this means that debris is likely to come into contact with the mucus, which is sticky that coats a lining of the nasal cavity. What did I just say there? What I'm getting at is that the passage of the air going through your nasal passage is not direct. You might think that would be a good idea, but it wouldn't be. We actually need to get that air swirling around inside our nasal passages. That then allows the air to come into contact with the mucus, so you can hope that bacteria and viruses and pollution and so on will wind up sticking there rather than getting down to our more delicate surfaces. And of course, this is also where the temperature adjustment can take place and where a lot of moisture is taken up. This is why on dry days, you may wind up feeling dry in your nasal passages. There may be some pain there, but that's better than drying out your lungs. So, just so you know, the conchae are also called the turbinate bones. Turbinate, like a wind turbine. Wind turbines make things go around and around and around. And in this case, the turbinate bones make the air in your nasal passages go around and around and around. Thank you.